Turbo and 2K show.
What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome. It is that time of the week again. It is podcast time, and man, oh man, I have a great show planned for you guys and gals out there. As you can see, 2K is on call tonight, so he will not be joining in the festivities. So you got me all night long, and it's going to be a good one. We're going to be talking college football. How did the top 25 do, and the ones that lost? How is that going to affect the poll coming out on Tuesday? And we're going to get into some NFL action, kind of see how everyone stacks up against each other in their own division. Go over the games that were today, and yeah, I for one can't wait. But as always, we start out every episode with a little bit of news here, and there we go. There wasn't a whole lot of news. I mean, there was some really, really big news, but as far as sports is concerned, not really a whole lot of news. But let's see here. The Marlins, they have a new manager. Clayton McCullough hired as the new Marlins manager. That's from Talking Baseball over on Twitter. But that's kind of the biggest news that I could find. I mean, there was some depressing stuff when you talk about Kirk Herbstreit and his dog Ben passing away. So big T's and P's to the Herbstreit family. And just to thank you for sharing Ben with all of us. I mean, he was pretty much the face of college football, if you really want to think about it. And yes, Kirk does have some others to fill in, but you know as well as I do, when it comes down to something like that, the OG is always better than his predecessors. So, like I said, big T's and P's to the Herbstreit family. But other than that, I mean, we had an election, which we're not going to get into because that's not what this show is about. But that's pretty much been kind of the whole thing. You know, the World Series is over. Now we get the NBA has started, but we really don't flex our pipes a whole lot when it comes to the NBA around here or the NHL. So we normally like to stick in our lane. I mean, every now and again we'll toss you an NBA, not a whole show, but a segment. But yeah, that's kind of where we're headed. So let's get on to some college football talk, ladies and gentlemen. Ladies and gentlemen, man, we had a great slate. As you know, College Game Day was down in the Bayou for Alabama LSU, and if you watched any of that game, College Game Day was probably the best part. If you were an LSU fan, let me get logged in here real quick. Okay, let's see here. I did not see where College Game Day is headed to next, but let's see where 2Ks and I picked. We had Oregon at Wisconsin. Highly doubt with the way Wisconsin is terrible. Oregon heading that way, but you never know. So, like I said, I did not see where they were going quite yet. Like I said, I really would be shocked, and we both picked that one. So, yeah, it's going to be kind of weird to see. So I really have no insight on that. But yeah, the college slate was awesome. Was absolutely awesome. Started with the kick at noon, and just went all the way through up until the end of the 7:30 games, and some, you know, even beyond that with the BYU game. So it was a jam-packed day full of awesomeness. Excuse me. Let's start out with the number one team in the nation, Oregon. They welcomed in Maryland, took care of Maryland quite easily. Kind of helped solidifying that number one spot for Oregon, and I really don't foresee them moving anywhere as it pertains to the college football playoff. But let's see here, and yeah, they held serve, so I really don't see any other team kind of moving past them. Ohio State dog walks Purdue. I mean, that was expected. One of the big things here is freshman wide receiver Jeremiah Smith breaks the school record with 9 touchdowns in his freshman year, overtaking Chris Carter, I believe. But yeah, just another one of those products out of that. Just seems like Ohio State and LSU just kind of seem to churn out wide receivers like crazy. He does lead the way with 6 catches, 87 yards, and a touchdown. Yeah, this was absolutely just a dismantling of a very bad Purdue team. A Purdue team that's 1-8 overall, 0-6 in the conference. So Ohio State took care of business. One team that did not take care of business. Georgia goes to Ole Miss. This was one that I had highlighted as an upset, and didn't expect it to go like this. I know that Jackson Dart was injured for a bit, but I just I did not. Well, it's kind of a catch-22 because both of these teams have very good defenses. Georgia's defense has been, pretty much unscorable. We saw that with Texas. We've seen Georgia kind of just dominate right out, right from the get. And, this show has caught a lot of heat from said Georgia fans, in particular over on TikTok. So this is not me dancing on you or anything like that. This Georgia team is still very good. But Carson Beck does not have a very good day, and there's clamorings to kind of see him kind of move away from that starting quarterback spot. So we shall see what Kirby Smart has up his sleeve next week. But they are 7-2 in a very, very competitive SEC conference. And like I said, Jackson Dart really doesn't have. I mean, we saw the week prior have more touchdown passes than incompletions, and this game did not go according to that. 13-22 for $199, a touchdown and an interception. So definitely not a Jackson Dart type of day. But if you are a Jackson Dart fan, this is one of the games where you kind of hoped he would show out, kind of put a stamp, hit his Heisman stamp on this season. But it really didn't kind of come to fruition. But a win's a win. A win's a win in the SEC. So that is, that's huge. That is absolutely huge. And definitely not an elimination game for the Bulldogs whatsoever, but definitely going to see some shakeup in this next college football ranking, which I do have the AP top 25. Let's take a peek at that. I know this AP doesn't mean anything right now, just because we go off the college football committee's rankings, but this just kind of gives you an idea. They have Oregon 1, Ohio State moves is at 2, Texas with a big win, slides up to number 3, Penn State 4, which there's a lot of people that are clamoring that Indiana needs to be ranked over Penn State just because Penn State's lost and Indiana hasn't, which we will get into here in a little bit. Tennessee 6, BYU 7, Notre Dame 8, Alabama 9, Ole Miss rounds out the top 10. Georgia 11, Miami 12, Boise State 13, SMU 14, Texas A&M 15, Army 16, Clemson 17, Colorado, which kind of holds their destiny in their hands as far as the Big 12 is concerned, sitting at 18, Washington State 19, Kansas State 20, and so on and so forth down into the 25. So definitely some shakeups here. One of the main ones we do not see is LSU for good reason, just because they lost, which we will get to. But I did want to kind of put that out there kind of for reference, just because like I said, even though this isn't really the ranking that everyone kind of hangs their hat on, but yeah, let's keep cruising. Georgia Tech puts I'm not going to say a beat down on Miami, but definitely not a Miami style game. This is one that Miami, I believe this is the third or fourth game that they've trailed in the second half by double digits. And it just seems like they were flirting with catastrophe time and time again. And on Saturday, it really came up to bite them. This Georgia Tech team we saw in Dublin get a big win week 0. They are 6-4, so they're definitely not chumps, but definitely not I'm not going to say a powerhouse team, because the Georgia Tech won 28-23, and excuse me. If we just take a look at the stats, Cam Ward has a fantastic day, 25 of 39, 348, and 3 touchdowns. And Georgia Tech used 2 quarterbacks. They both combined for 11 for 16, 99 yards and 2 touchdowns, but 0 interceptions. And it seemed like this Georgia Tech defense was very opportunistic. They took, they didn't make mistakes, whereas Miami did. And at the end, we if you watched any of this game, it's like, okay, Miami, it was 23. Excuse me. Hold on one second. In the fourth quarter, we kind of saw Miami start to put some stuff together, make a couple stops, and it's like, okay, we've seen this movie before. We know how this is going to end. Miami's going to go march down the field and get the dub like they always do, and it wasn't the case. Georgia makes that last stand and comes away with a big win because this is, Miami was one of the undefeated. Now, as far as the ACC bid, automatic bid goes, they're still firmly in the driver's seat. So this wasn't a, kind of win or go home type scenario. They are still very much in the college football playoff and will hold one of those. If the season ends today, we'll have one of those top 4 automatic qualifiers, which means they get a bye. And it's something that 2Ks and I, not only us, but a lot of other pundits have been saying. This Miami team hasn't really played anybody. When they do, now I'm not saying Georgia Tech is a barn burner by any means, but it was one of those where they just kind of seemed like they played around for just a little bit too long, and next thing you know, came up on the wrong side. So historically, they have been coming up on the right side, but this time, Georgia Tech makes just enough plays to kind of end that one and end the undefeated streak over there in Miami. But like I said, one loss in the ACC is nothing to. Like I said, with the SEC now, the further we go along, we're going to be weeding some of these teams out. But yeah, the first loss for Miami in the ACC is not really going to affect them too much. Texas has a big win against Florida, 49-17. Let's take a look at the box score here. Quinn Ewers has a monster game, 19-27, 333 yards and 5 touchdown passes. Florida's quarterback Warner was 12 for 25, $132 and 2 picks. So it was definitely, this was 35-0 at halftime. So I think that stat alone just tells you how much of a beatdown Texas gave Florida. So maybe that loss to Georgia kind of smacked them in the mouth, and they're going to be righting the ship, as you will. But they sit 4-1 in the SEC, so definitely still a player when it comes to kind of their destiny, if you will, when it comes down to whether they get the automatic qualifier or one of the at-large in the group of 12. Penn State has a big win over Washington, 35-6. Big bounce-back game. And a much-needed win by Penn State because I believe they had a bye last week, in the week prior is when they got beat by Ohio State. So definitely needed some time to get right, and James Franklin got him right, even though, like you said, this Washington team is definitely not the same team from last year. This is a still isn't one of those big games that Coach Franklin needs to win to kind of help solidify, that Penn State program as a national championship contender. But a win's a win. A win's a win, and they kind of stand pat when it comes to the college, the rankings, like we saw. Tennessee gets a big win over Mississippi State, 33-17. Big thing here was Tennessee's quarterback, Imalavale went out. He was 8 for 13, 174 yards and 2 touchdowns. So it's definitely on the right track there for to start the game. Hopefully he's not out for a significant amount of time, because it's kind of one of those things. He is an absolute stud. Yes, he's a freshman. Yes, we've seen some growing pains throughout the year, but I still think there's the ceiling is very, very high for this kid. So looking at the stats, Tennessee has a player named Squirrel. Squirrel White had 3 catches for 63 yards and a touchdown. So yeah, it was this one was 20-7 at half, and yeah, just really wasn't a competitive game at all. So but Tennessee gets a big win. Michigan travels to Bloomington. This was a little bit of a nail biter, 2K crew. I'm very proud of 2K's Wolverines. This was 17-3 at half, and that Michigan defense kept the Hoosiers out of the end zone for the entire second half, only letting them score a field goal in the fourth quarter to help. I believe it was 17-15 at that point. They kick a field goal, make it 20-15, and this whole thing with Michigan this whole entire season hasn't been about their defense. Their defense has been fantastic, aside from that Texas loss. But again, you could kind of attribute that to the defense being on the field as much as they were, just being gassed because that offense couldn't do anything against the Texas defense. And it was this was, Indiana's 10-0. I believe they've never been 10-0 before in school history. And on top of that, they were a 14-point favorite against Michigan. This was the first time that, since they've been keeping stats, that they've been that big, that they've been favored, period, over Michigan, let alone 2 touchdowns. And definitely not they obviously did not cover with 5 points, but a win is a win to stay 10-0. And now, kind of low key, I'm not so sure how prevalent these are, but I'm here lately, I've been on Twitter more than any other social media, and there's a lot of the Michigan faithful that are they're fed up with Sherrone Moore. They are just they've had it. They've absolutely had it, and I'm not so sure that I'm on that bandwagon, I guess you could say. It is one of those things where kind of scratching your head a little bit, but especially after 1 year, I can't get on board with that. I can't. I really can't. They're 5-5. That's not like it's an absolute Purdue record, having 1 win and looking terrible in every single one of these games, because the defense has kind of kept them in most every game. Now, still do have the game against Ohio State, but this team, it all comes down to the quarterback play. Davis Warren started the year. Alex Orji came in, and then the kid that retired came in, and then they go back to Davis Warren. And when you're having so many kind of hands in the pot, if you will, you're not going to have a good product. You're not going to have a good product. This is coming from a Notre Dame fan, where I'm still not happy with our quarterback, Riley Leonard. If we had a little bit better quarterback play, I have a very good feeling that A, we'd be undefeated, and B, would be just coasting through a lot of these games, instead of having to sweat out the first half, until they finally decide, like, oh shit, yep, we kind of figured some stuff out, let's go now. And I'm thankful for the coaching staff to where they figure this shit out, but can we do it a little sooner? I mean, this is, kind of getting off topic here, but which we'll save some of the Notre Dame stuff till we get to that game. But yeah, this Michigan team is still a very good team. It's as a team in 2024, you can only go as far as your quarterback is going to take you. And they knew going in that none of these three gentlemen were actually going to excel, and for them keeping keep switching in Alex Orji, and which it is what it is. I mean, you could say, well, Turbo, they did it last year and we're completely fine. But yes, they had a leader. They had a leader and a competent quarterback. I don't think Davis Warren is leading anybody. He is not J.J. McCarthy, even though they look similar. But he is not J.J. McCarthy. He is not in between that and the offensive lineman that had went to the NFL, left a huge gap, huge hole in this offense. And we've seen Mullings and Edwards kind of, Edwards keep doing his thing. Mullins has been, I'm not going to say a direct replacement for Blake Corum, but you can only run the ball so much when these games kind of get out of hand, or you're not in the right down and distance to where you can continue to run the ball. You have to pass the ball. And for as good as Colston Loveland is as a tight end, it's not a very good sign unless you're Jason Kelce, or excuse me, Travis Kelce and Pat Mahomes, where the tight end is your leading receiver every single game. Okay. It just doesn't happen that often. So I'm definitely not out on Sherrone Moore yet. But there were many years of clamorings in Ann Arbor to get rid of Harbaugh. I mean, there was a handful of years where we us as fans thought, hell, he's gone. There's no way. And next thing you know, Michigan re-signs him. And there were some bad years with Harbaugh. Keep that in mind, Michigan fans. There was definitely some growing pains. There was definitely, actually, I will go out and say it. Some of those Michigan teams had worse quarterback play than what Davis Warren is doing. Hands down. So Michigan has never really been that, kind of just fly by the seat of your pants and let's, just knee jerk reaction. I mean, look how many years Brady Hoke was there. I think Sherrone Moore could coach circles around Brady Hoke. So just give it time. And it's rumored that you guys are getting a $10 million quarterback. So good on you. Good on you. Hopefully Dave Portnoy picks up most of that tab, but because he promised. So, all right. I kind of talked about the BYU Utah game. This game was back and forth. I mean, this was 21-10 at half. And BYU's defense kept Utah out of the end zone in the entire second half. So BYU beats kind of a. There were a lot of people, myself included, that were very high on Utah going into this season, and their quarterback seems like he's been in college since 1995. So he went out again this year, and I mean the whole thing just kind of fell apart this year. So, but that team in the first half was buzzing. 2K Crew was buzzing, was absolutely buzzing. And if you were an overbetter, I believe the line was 34.5. So they almost eclipsed that mark in the first half. So if you were an overbetter on that one, you definitely made some money. Okay, let's get to the Notre Dame game here. Big win against Florida State. Yes, Florida State is terrible. Florida State is a one-win team. Notre Dame wins 52-3. Now, a couple things before we get into the stats. I want to give you just kind of my all-around attitude vision on this game. It hasn't seemed like there's been an attitude, just a fuck you attitude when teams come into Notre Dame Stadium. Whether that's this year, last year, it just doesn't seem like it. Now, as this game progressed, you could see it coming. You could see it, just kind of manifesting. But in the first half, it was getting close to halftime, it was 21-3. But that first quarter was just abysmal. Yes, Notre Dame takes takes their first possession, goes down and scores, which doesn't happen that often. I was super stoked. Super stoked. And leading up to this, they were talking about how Florida State was on like their third or fourth string quarterback. They started out with DJ Uiagalelei, and he was terrible. He got hurt. Then the guy filled in for him. He got hurt. So now we're down to Brock Glenn and this Luke kid, and they were saying how they're on their third string running back, and just pretty much this team's going to be shit. Well, the first couple drives, 2K crew, I'm like, okay, where in the hell did this team come from? This is not a one-win team. And yes, maybe I'm a little gun shy from the Northern Illinois loss, but this is a game. I mean, granted, if you look at the score, Florida State went down and scored a field goal on their first possession. That was it. And right about the time that, because there was, like I said, Notre Dame scored on their first possession, Florida State scored on theirs. In between that, until midway through the second quarter, it was back and forth. It was 3 and outs. It was, Florida State would move the ball a little bit, then there'd be a punt, and it's like, okay, this needs to stop. So I went on Twitter and posted a tweet saying, yet again, another terrible team comes into Notre Dame Stadium and just kind of makes us seem like we're a terrible team. Because this should have been, yes, it ended up being a laugher. It did. And I believe the over-under for this one was 43.5. So definitely hit early. But the final score really wasn't indicative on how the offense played. The defense looked very sketchy at the beginning. They figured stuff out. The offense, yes, with 52 points, the offense did look good. But when your starting quarterback goes for 215 and 1 touchdown. Now, granted, I will be the first one to admit that his wide receivers were not giving him much help at all in the first half. And it seemed like once they started going to Great House, that's when, and let's see here. Great House, and even though Evans only had 2 catches for 21 yards, he had 1 called back, but he seems to be like he's regaining form prior to that injury last year. And yeah, and for whatever reason, Jordan Faison, he dropped more balls than he caught. So it definitely wasn't, it's one of those things where I like Riley Leonard. I do, as a person. I like him. He's a very good leader. He still looks like he's 12. I don't know what difference that makes, but the run game was good. Didn't get a whole lot of production out of Jeremiah Love, which he's been kind of, I'm not going to say the bell cow, but kind of the focus of that running game. But Jadarian Price kind of took that over and has 7 carries for almost 100 yards and a touchdown. Riley Leonard has 70 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. But Love did get into the end zone to continue his rushing touchdown streak, so that was awesome. But all in all, yes, it ended up being a very, very good game as an Irish fan. And my second takeaway is the announcers. Okay, if you've followed me or followed the show for any amount of time, you know my disdain for some of the NBC announcers. In particular, Jason Garrett. He's terrible. Absolutely terrible. But the 2 chuckleheads they had on last night, usually I'm a pretty big fan, and they did a fantastic job up until the point where they started saying, why is Notre Dame running up the score? Why are they doing this? Why are they doing that? It was with our second and third string kids. And as you can see, our quarterback has trouble completing passes. So when you're actually playing a game, yeah, let's get him some run. Let's open it up a little bit. Let's try something new. Get him more confident, because the next opponents are going to be harder than Florida State. Yes, it's Virginia, Army, and then USC. Army still being undefeated. Army being in the top 25. And So I have absolutely no problem with quote unquote running up the score. I could give two shits. I could give two shits. One, like I said, gets our guys more reps. Two, without a conference championship game and a horrific loss already, style points are huge. Style points are huge. So 52-3 makes a big statement regardless of who you're playing or not. So for all of you saying, "Oh, Notre Dame shouldn't run up the score," I don't want to hear it. I do not want to hear it. Let's move. I will get off my soapbox now. And let's move on to Alabama LSU game day down in Baton Rouge. And like I said, for LSU fans, the game day experience was probably the most fun that you had, because this really wasn't a game at all. This was 21-6 at half, and LSU had no answer for Jaden Milroe. And when I say no answer, wasn't through the air. 12 for 18, 109 yards. No touchdowns, no picks. But he has 12 carries for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns, a long of 72. How many other quarterbacks break off a run of 72 yards? Not many. Not many. And it didn't help that Nussmeier threw 2 interceptions himself. So it was just a combination of the weather was shitty. It was raining pretty much the whole game. LSU continuing to have problems with mobile quarterbacks. I mean, this is something that has, it's been an issue for quite a while. And Jalen Milroe, excuse me. He kind of took that game over. And this, like I said, 42-13 is an absolute beatdown. And there's a lot of people, especially on Notre Dame Twitter, that are like, "Hey, LSU, you finally, are you listening to what us Irish fans said about Brian Kelly? Are you starting to see it now?" And yes, for the thumbnail, I did kind of poke fun at Coach Kelly, but a lot of times he brings it on himself. Okay, this was not one of them. This wasn't even close. I mean, this was just an all-out ass beating. So I'm not saying it's his fault, but it seems like every time a Coach Kelly-led team goes against a mobile quarterback, these are kind of the results you get. And this was an elimination game because both teams had 2 losses already. And so a third loss by LSU, second in conference, was pretty much, bye-bye to the playoffs. So this was definitely a huge game for both of these teams, and Alabama came out of it victorious. So as we'll see on Tuesday, I'm sure, they will be well within the playoff. I just want to touch base on one more here. Actually, 2 more. Boise State takes care of Nevada, 28-21. Again, this is Boise State was the next 5, the leader of the next 5, so they would get an automatic qualifier. But because they are not the Power 4 or the Core 4 or whatever the hell we're calling them nowadays, but they would get in, but they were listed as the 12 seed. So because they are like the best of the Power 5 or whatever you want to call it, they would get the 12 seed. So with the win here, I suspect they'll stay there, and not a very convincing win, but still a win. And Genty goes for 34 carries, 209 yards, and 3 touchdowns. So hopefully that kind of helps pad his Heisman case, if you will. But one more game I really want to touch on here before we get to the NFL slate is the Colorado Texas Tech game. This game was 13-10 Texas Tech at halftime, and after that, pretty much pretty much Colorado just took over the game. Just took over the game. And Shedeur has 291 yards passing, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Travis Hunter has 9 catches, 99 yards, and a touchdown. He did have an interception, but was called back on a penalty, not his penalty, but did have an interception, but didn't actually count. So the reason I bring the Colorado game up is like they not, coming from a team that had a lot of hype at the beginning of last year, ended up being 4-6 or 4-7, I believe, to now, like they control their own destiny in the Big 12. If they could win the Big 12 conference title game, they would be in the college football playoff, which I think is huge. I think is absolutely huge. And it's one of those things where I want to see Deion on the biggest stage. I want to see Shedeur on the biggest stage. I want to see how Travis Hunter, how he not only defends these top receivers in other conferences, but how he goes against the top corners, in the other conferences. Excuse me. So that I'm honestly very excited to see that, and I do hope that it does come true. But like I said, everything will shake out on Tuesday to kind of see the new updated college football playoff seeding. So, but let's get to some NFL here, 2K crew. Let's get to some NFL Week 10 recap. Week 10 recap. I am peeking in on the Lions Texans. It's 7-0 Texans so far. But there was a game in Germany. I'm not sure why people paid to go see this game. And if you are watching this and that do live in Germany, I'm sorry you had to watch this game. These are 2 terrible teams. 2 very terrible teams. And the downside is one of them had to win. And the Panthers came away with the win 20-17. Not going to spend a whole lot of time on that. Patriots go into Chicago and get a win. This game was terrible. This game was again absolutely terrible. Caleb Williams looked atrocious. 16-30, 120 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Drake May, 15-25, 184 yards, a touchdown and an interception. Both rookie quarterbacks. And I don't know really much more to say. This offense, this was terrible. Caleb had 69 yards or 120 yards passing, and they had 73 yards rushing. So, yeah, less than 200 yards of total offense. And I do have some tweets about it because, this is, I'm still a Bears fan a little bit. I've definitely jumped on the Lions bandwagon just because the Bears have been terrible. And it looks like I'd be very shocked if Eberflus has a job tomorrow. And to kind of highlight that, this is from Mikey Bear Down Cuz over on Twitter, one of the hosts of the Brilliantly Dumb Show. He says the Chicago Bears were a 6-point favorite against a 2-7 team with a rookie head coach and quarterback at home. They are going to lose outright by 2 touchdowns. Has to be the end of Matt Eberflus era. Just has to be. And Cuz, I'm right there with you. Right there with you. We talked about it last week. This team is in a free fall. Some changes that need to be made because this is absolutely ridiculous. And I have one here from Mike Greenberg. Greeny says Caleb Williams was drafted ahead of Daniels, Mays, and Nix. He is playing worse than any of them because of his coaching. The Bears are doing it again to another young quarterback. So predictable, so frustrating. And Greeny's a Jets fan. If anyone knows what, just frustrating and just bad football looks like, that's what's going on in New York right now. It's even worse in Chicago, even though the Bears have a better record. So yeah, I really don't know what to say. It's like, and Greeny hit the nail on the head. Frustrating as hell. Frustrating as hell. But one of the better games, Bills at Colts. Bills go into Lucas Oil, and kind of a sloppy game, to be honest with you. You know, we've been talking about how Josh Allen has not been throwing interceptions. Josh Allen has been taking care of the ball. Josh Allen goes for 280 yards passing, no touchdowns, and 2 picks, ladies and gentlemen, 2 picks. He does have a rushing touchdown, as does James Cook. But Joey Flacco kind of has, I'm not going to say a Joey Flacco day. Goes 272 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. So, like I said, definitely a sloppy game on both sides. Granted, Coleman and Diggs were out for the Bills. Diggs is done for the year, but no Coleman. So Shakir was kind of like the go-to guy here. He had 6 catches for 56 yards, even though Hollins had 4 catches for 86 yards. But this was definitely more about Josh Allen and just being Josh Allen and doing what he does. But like we've talked about, I think the kind of, leading to what's different this year with Josh Allen as compared to last year or even the year previous is the lack of turnovers. And now we're seeing him, 2 picks in a game for the first time in, probably all season. So I'm not saying it's alarming quite yet, but definitely something that it's definitely worth keeping an eye on to kind of keep checking and kind of see where he's at with that, because he is the heart and soul of that team, which your quarterback should be. Chiefs are still the Chiefs. Chiefs are still the Chiefs. It took a blocked field goal for them to get the win 16-14 against the Broncos. And of course, with the Chiefs, there's always, when they get a win, a close game that's a win, there's, always the controversy, always the controversy, if you will. And Mahomes goes 266 for a touchdown, no picks. Kareem Hunt, 14 carries, 35 yards. Kareem Hunt and actually Travis Kelce got in the end zone with 64 yards. On the flip side, Bo Nix goes 215, 2 tutties, no interceptions. A familiar name, Audric Estime, 14 carries for 53 yards. Go Irish. Love it. Love it, love it. And Courtland Sutton has 6 catches, 70 yards, and a touchdown, as well as, not even going to try that name. Not even going to try it. So when I saw the spread for this game, yes, the Chiefs are 9-0. I get it. This Broncos team was 5-4 coming into this. I get it. I do. But coming into Arrowhead, and this was a big spread. So Chiefs definitely did not cover yet again. This Broncos defense was just too good to just allow for that big of a spread. So again, big win for the Chiefs. And one thing I've noticed, that I believe this is their first game at 1:00 this year. It seems like they've, been prime time or Monday night or Sunday night football, or maybe the occasional 420 game. But yeah, it was kind of cool to see them be a 1:00 game for once. Saints-Falcons. Saints get a big dub here. I thought for sure, especially the way Kirk Cochains and that Falcons team has been playing, I thought for sure this would be a shoe-in. Kirk goes for 306 and a pick. Derek Carr has, especially after all the shit that's been coming out, that his teammates and ex-teammates and everyone else have been saying about him and the organization. He goes 269, 2 touchdowns, no picks. Kamara has 55 yards. Bijan, 20 carries, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns. Drake London was healthy again, 8 catches for 97 yards. So big win for the Saints. Again, this did not see this one coming. Like I said, I thought this was going to be a Falcons dub all the way. 49ers Bucks. 49ers squeak out a 23-20 win on the return of Christian McCaffrey. And Speaking of which, McCaffrey had 13 carries, 39 yards, and 6 catches for 66 yards. So, excuse me, 68 yards. So a little, right around 100 yards in total offense. We saw Jake Moody miss a handful of field goals, but nails the one for the win. But Purdy goes 353, 2 touchdowns. And Baker, with that very depleted wide receiving core, goes 116 in a touchdown. This was one of those games that I kind of figured that the 49ers would win. It was a whole lot closer than what I thought it was going to be, but a much needed win for the 49ers. Steelers at Commanders. This was a tantalizing game. And if you saw this, it was 4th and short towards the end of the game, and Russell Wilson gets the defensive lineman to jump off sides so they can get the first down and milk the clock away, bringing them to 7-2. 7-2. Russ goes 195 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Jaden Daniels goes 202, no touchdowns, no picks. Big game by Eckler, 44 yards rushing and 2 touchdowns. So definitely a back and forth game here, 2K crew, but in the end, Pittsburgh does get a big dub against a very, very hot Washington Commanders team. So yeah, that was a very, very good watch there. Vikings at Jaguars. This was a weird one. Yeah, Sam Darnold throws 3 picks. 3 picks against Jacksonville down in Duval. And first game in a while without Trevor Lawrence. Mac Jones also throws 2. He doesn't do quite as bad. He throws 2 picks. Yeah, definitely an odd game. Just a bunch of field goals and 1 touchdown in the first quarter from Jacksonville, which came off of Mac Jones' rush. I did not get to see any of this game, but definitely a game I thought that the Vikings would win a little bit more convincingly. Justin Jefferson only has 5 catches for 48 yards, but it was good to see TJ Hawkinson get back in the mix, 8 catches for 72 yards. Aaron Jones did leave with a bruised chest or something like that. I did see that in the highlights. Titans Chargers. Chargers get a big dub, 27-17. Like 2Ks and I were talking about last week. This Chargers team is legit. This Chargers team could make a run at a wild card spot for sure. Not even going to really get into the Eagles-Cowboys game, except for the fact that Eagles won 34-6. And we got our first glance of Trey Lance in a Cowboys uniform. And as the score would suggest, didn't really make a whole lot of difference. And I do have one more tweet here concerning the Jets at Cardinals. 2K crew, don't look now, but this Cardinals team is fucking hot. This Cardinals team is on fire hot. Kyler goes 266 in a passing touchdown. Let's see, James Conner has a rushing touchdown. We saw Marvin Harrison Jr. get in the end zone. And Aaron Rodgers, 151 yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions. Breece Hall has 52 yards rushing. Garrett Wilson has 41 yards receiving. Like I said, I'm not 100% sold on the fact that I am sold on the fact that this Jets team is bad. What I'm not sold on is if they're this bad. But here's one more tweet here for you. It's from ML Football over on Twitter. Legendary Cardinals quarterback Kyler Murray becomes the first player in NFL history to complete 85% of his passes while having 250 yards passing, or 250 passing yards and 2 rushing touchdowns. Kyler also completed 91.7 of his passes. And that math comes from 22 of 24. 22 of 24. So where does this leave us as far as the standings are concerned? And we'll kind of leave you with this here, 2K crew. Let's take a walk down here. AFC East, Buffalo is 8-2. Jets are second. Jets and Pats are tied at 3-7. So they definitely have a stranglehold on that division. In the AFC North, the Pittsburgh Steelers sit atop 7-2, followed by the Baltimore Ravens and the still in the playoff picture Cincinnati Bengals at 4-6. Those same Bengals that had Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase just ball out. Fortunately, in a loss on Thursday, but definitely a very, very entertaining game. Texans sit atop the AFC South 6-3, followed by the Colts at 4-6. In the AFC West, Kansas City Chiefs 9-0, and the aforementioned LA Chargers are 6-3. And the Broncos are there at 5-5. So probably, I would say two of these divisions are pretty much definitely the AFC East is wrapped up. Barring a very major injury to the Kansas City Chiefs, I don't see them. Granted, it's only 3 losses separate them as compared to 5 in the AFC East, but pretty much putting a bow on that one. NFC East, the Eagles sit atop 7-3. With that loss today, the Commanders go to 7-3, followed by the Cowboys at 3-6. NFC North, very, very highly competitive here. We have the Lions at 7-1, Vikings 7-2, Packers 6-3. We've already talked about the Bears; they're done at 4-5. NFC South, again. Let's see. 2 of these teams are, it's the Falcons and Bucks. Falcons are leading that division 6-4. Bucks are 4-6. Then the NFC West, the Cardinals, like we just talked about, are 6-4, leading that division, followed by the 49ers and the Rams and the Seahawks. So that one is still very, very up for grabs there. Definitely a more condensed and packed closer race in each one of these divisions as compared to the AFC, but you could say that the NFC is deeper, but still I have a feeling the main heavyweights minus the Lions are sitting in the AFC. So definitely a whole lot of football yet to be played, but I just wanted to kind of wrap up the recap here with how's the division setting? How's the division setting? So yeah, that has been our time here, 2K crew. Everyone have a fantastic week. Fingers crossed 2Ks will be riding along with me next week, so we can kind of break down a little bit more of this and get you his input on everything else. So everyone have a great week, and as always, Jim Rome, I'm coming for you.